Hello and welcome back to the History of English Literature series. In this video, we'll study about the prose and drama. Poetry has already been covered in the previous video, so do check that video. And in this video, we'll study the important writers and their works, significance of the prose and drama of this age, important questions not only for NET but your masters too, and in the end, I'll share the chronological date of all the important events that happened throughout this age. So we will start with one of the greatest writers in English literature, Daniel Defoe. He was born in 1661 in London. He came from a middle class family. His father was a butcher. Although he was trained for a religious career, he chose a very different path and went on to live a highly adventurous life. He didn't stick to just one profession. In fact, Defoe worked as a trader, a journalist, a government spy, and even spent some time in prison. All these experiences greatly influenced his writing. Defoe was an extremely productive writer. It is believed that he wrote more than 250 works. What made him special was his ability to understand what the public wanted. He wrote on a wide variety of subjects and always kept his readers engaged. One of the greatest strengths was combining journalism with storytelling. His works often feel like real life accounts rather than fictional. His most famous work is Robinson Crusoe, which is considered one of the earliest English novels. Apart from this, he also wrote Moll Flanders, Captain Singleton, Colonel Jet, and Roxana. Another important work is A Journal of the Plough Year. Although it appears to be a real historical account, it is actually fictional. It shows Defoe's unique technique. He presented imaginary stories as if they were completely true. That is why his works are often called fictional biographies. Keep that in mind. He took great care to make his stories believable and realistic. His writing style is simple, direct, and highly detailed. He focused on ordinary people and everyday life instead of exaggerated or heroic characters. This realistic approach made him one of the pioneers of the modern novel. To conclude, Daniel Defoe's contribution to English literature is immense. His innovative storytelling, realistic style laid the foundation for the English novel as we know it today. Now, the next writer whom we are going to study is none other than Jonathan Swift. He was born in 1667 and is considered one of the most original writers of his time. However, his life was deeply tragic. He was born in Ireland to English parents and later worked as a secretary to Sir William Temple. Eventually, he became a clergyman and served as the Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. Swift was not just a writer, he was a thinker and a very critical observer of society. He had a deeply pessimistic view of human nature. In fact, his writings often show a strong dislike for mankind, which is known as misanthropy. Keep that in mind, guys. Swift is best known for his use of satire, that is, criticizing society indirectly through humor and irony. His most famous work is Gulliver's Travel. I hope you all would have heard of it. Although it appears to be a children's story, it is actually one of the most powerful satires ever written. The novel is divided into four parts, each revealing a different aspect of human weakness. In the first voyage to Lilliput, Swift criticizes petty politics and the small mindedness of people. In the second voyage, humans are shown as tiny and insignificant. In the third voyage, he attacks scientists and thinkers who focus on ruthless and impractical ideas. And in the final voyage to the land of the Hoyams and Yahoos, he presents humans as degraded animals. This clearly shows his growing disappointment with humanity. Through his works, Swift exposes the pride, hypocrisy, and foolishness of mankind. Unlike many writers of his age who believed in optimism, Swift was a profound pessimist. In conclusion, Jonathan Swift remains one of the greatest satirists in English literature, whose works continue to challenge the way we see ourselves and the society. Now we will study about Joseph Edison and Richard Steele. To study them, we will begin with the basics. As you all know, UGC NET, the basics are everything. Joseph Edison, born in 1672, died in 1719, and Richard Steele, born in 1672 and died in 1729. As you might have seen, both born in the same year, 1672. Do note this. This is what the text means when it says they were quite just of an age. Same generation, same world. They first met as boys at the Carter House School, then again as young men at Oxford. This early friendship laid the foundation for one of the greatest literary collaborations in English history. Now, the text gives us a clear contrast between the two men, and this contrast is extremely important for now. Let's take Steele first. After Oxford, Steele went into the army, then he threw himself, and the text uses the phrase characteristic ardor into politics. His life was full of ups and downs. The writer Thackeray describes Steele in words that the text directly quotes, and you must remember this too. Steele had outlived his place, his schemes, his wife, his income, his health, and almost everything but his kind heart. He died in Wales, that is where his turbulent life ended. Now we'll see for Edison, a completely different trajectory. Edison gained a high reputation for classical scholarship. He made the grand tour of Europe as a preparation for diplomacy. He then entered the House of Commons. He became Chief Secretary for Ireland and for a year Secretary of State. Edison died 10 years before his friend Steele. Remember that Edison 1719 and Steele 1729? Now, the character contrast. It is described very beautifully, and this is very important for your NET exam. Steele was, and note my exact words, a thorough bohemian, easygoing, thriftless, careless, but full of generosity and sympathy, and with an honest love of what is pure and good. Edison, on the other hand, was an urban and polished gentleman of exquisite refinement, of taste and lofty ideas, of rectitude and pity, but shy, self conscious, and a little remote and austere. So, Steele, warm, chaotic, generous, and Edison, polished, precise, and a little cold. We come to the most important part for your NET exam, the actual literary output. It is very clear about who came first. It was Steele, who was always, in Hudson's words, the most originative genius, who led the way by founding the Tatler. The Tatler was the first of the long line of 18th century periodical essays. Remember the sequence: Tatler came first, founded by Steele. Then came The Spectator, the most famous of them all. Now write this, they are directly from the text and they will appear in your NET exam for sure. The Spectator began on March 1, 1711. It was published daily except the Sundays. It ran until December 6, 1712. Then 8 months later it was revived, but this time by Edison alone. This revival ran 3 times a week from June 18 to December 20, 1714. Now, the essay count in its complete form, The Spectator, contains 635 essays, out of which Edison wrote 274 and Steele wrote 240. The remaining 121 were written by their various friends. Keep in mind 635 total, 274 by Edison, 240 by Steele, and 121 by others. Fix these numbers in your memory. You will be glad. Now, we'll see for their ethical and social mission. Why did Edison and Steele write? What was their purpose? The text gives us a very precise answer, and that is crucial. They set themselves as moralists to break down two opposed influences. One, the profligate restoration tradition of loose living and loose thinking. Second, Puritan fanaticism and bigotry. So, on one side, the immoral expanse of restoration culture, on the other side, the rigid and tolerant fanaticism of the Puritans. Edison and Steele positioned themselves squarely in the middle as voices of reason, decency, and good sense. And how did they do this? This is where their method became significant. They did not indulge in sweeping condemnations and unqualified invectives, as Puritan moralists habitually did. Instead, they wrote good humor. They made allowance for ordinary human failings, but at the same time, they consistently advocated the claims of decency and sound sense. And their most powerful weapon, it was by their use of wit, humor, satire that they scored most. The post-restoration literature, wit and humor had commonly been used in the service of vice. To make decency look ridiculous, Edison and Steele turned the tables. They got the laugh of the side of decency, and the gain the text says was enormous. Beyond their moral mission, Edison and Steele had an educational aim as well. They discussed in a light and engaging way art, philosophy, the drama, poetry, everything. Their goal was not only to interest the general reader, but to guide and develop his taste. One specific example the text gives, Edison published his famous series of 18 papers on Paradise Lost in the Spectator. Through this, he helped spread among English people a better appreciation of Milton and his work. Think about what that means. Milton's Paradise Lost being explained and celebrated to ordinary readers through a daily newspaper. That is the power of the spectator. And crucially, they address themselves avidly and directly to women. It makes this point very deliberately at a time when women in society were as a rule immersed in the myriad trivialities of existence. Addison and Steele did their best to draw them into the currents of the larger intellectual life. This was a genuinely progressive act for the 18th century, believe me. Now, perhaps the most important literary point in the entire section, and absolutely crucial for your UGC NET exam, we will talk about Addison and Steele's contribution to character writing. Before them, in post Restoration literature, satirists in verse and prose had been cultivating what is known as character writing. They took the characters of the Greek writers as their models. But the text says these former studies of types were often clever. They were merely lay figures without reality of life. In the hands of Addison and Steele, the 17th century character study became personal and vital. Instead of catalogues of qualities, we have actual men moving amid real scenes, taking part in various incidents. The greatest example of this, Sir Roger de Coverley. Sir Roger is the delightful Tory squire who acquires in the Spectator papers, and it makes a landmark claim about him. In many of the spectator papers in which scenes from the life of Sir Roger are described, we have the modern novel in from Hudson directly as it is in the UGC NET favorite. What it means, the spectator papers show the vivid characteristics of real human beings in real social situations represent a stage in the evolution of the genre novel. Addison and Steele did not write novels, but they create the conditions, the techniques, the sensibility that made novels possible. Quickly, I'll also mention their works outside the periodical essays. Steele wrote comedies, the text mentions these but says we will discuss them separately. Addison wrote one tragedy again mentioned briefly. And Addison wrote a once famous poem called The Campaign, written to celebrate the victory of Blenheim, which proved to be the passport of political advancement. But, and note this carefully, the praise once lavished upon the campaign series absolutely ridiculous now. So, for net purpose, the campaign was historically important for Addison's career, but is not regarded as a great literary. Now, let's quickly cover the drama of this age. The drama of Pope's age is of slight importance, only worth studying for its broad historical interest. In tragedy, the most noteworthy work was Addison's theatre. It was an attempt to bring the French school drama into the English stage. The very the versification is stiff, the declamations chilling, and the characters lifeless. Fine historically, but not a great literary work. Now, comedy. And that is more important for your net exam. The most significant feature of the comedy of this period was its determination to purify itself from the licentiousness of restoration drama. Three names associated with this effort: Coolisiber, Mr. Cantilever, and most importantly, Richard Steele. Steele wrote four plays, his best, The Constant Lovers, described as his last performance of any moment. Steele forgot the first business of comedy is to amuse, not to preach. His plays were so overloaded with ethical purpose that they became insipid and dull. He turned his stage into a lay pulpit, and in doing so, he became the founder of what is known as sentimental comedy. Keep in mind who is known as the father of sentimental comedy? Surely not. Finally, the other name is George Lilo, who was born in 1693 and died in 1739. He was connected to sentimental comedy. He wrote London Merchant or History of George Barnwell and Fatal Curiosity. Lilo's attempt was to establish domestic drama, tragedy, with characters and incidents taken from common life, not from history or romance. He was a tradesman and nonconformist, and his didactics thus traces directly to his Puritan. Now, in the next few slides, you will see some events that happened in the age arranged in a chronological order. You can pause this video and learn them. And if you like the content, do like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. See you again.